Hey, what's up, everybody? Obviously, I'm doing one of these, kind of a comic book hangout, having an adult discussion about topics in comics. And obviously, I have with me a good friend of mine, Paul Gomez. And we're going to be talking about the Frankie's Comics bankruptcy, what it means for comics. Obviously, I think a lot of people know that Frankie's Comics is a comic shop. I think they're in North Carolina, and they might be in South Carolina. I'm not exactly sure their exact location, but the basic premise, for those who don't know, is that they were having some financial troubles, I believe, starting in 2022, maybe even late 2021. And then pretty much 12 months in, all throughout 2022, and starting in January, they were really starting the process of declaring bankruptcy. And they have now declared bankruptcy. And so now that's kind of where we're going to talk about and what that means for the whole industry, what it means for Frankie's Comics, what it means for comic shops, and obviously what it means for indie comic people. And I think it is a worthwhile discussion to have and engage in and kind of talk about it. And I figured that I would talk with Paul, who's in about 40, 45 comic shops. And I think it's great. So before we get into that, I do want to give you a chance to tell people who you are briefly, where you're at, social media, so people can check you out. And then we're going to get into the nitty gritty and perhaps get controversial.
Andrew, thanks for having me. My name is Paul Gomez. I go by Paul Gomez 790 on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can definitely look me up. If you got any questions about creating comics, I'm glad to help. And if I can't find the answer, I will find somebody who can. Hit me up if you have any questions. Let me know. And I'm always glad to have a conversation.
Yes, so obviously we're talking about the Frankie Comics issue, and I think the best place is to start is that obviously I've been a customer of them. I just actually bought some stuff off of them off of Labor Day. It was 65% off of some pretty cool variants. A $30 book is $10. I really couldn't refuse. Maybe it's because I'm always looking for a bargain. I don't know. I bought some, I think it was Carnage throwing Venom over the top rope. Those variants, I thought they were very funny. I'm a wrestling fan. But I don't know what your experience is with Frankie's Comics and even what your reaction is, because it is kind of, I think, a big shock that a comic shop is about $1 million plus in debt. And it kind of, I think, is one of the bigger shocks, at least on the comic book side of this year. So I'm curious what your reaction and even your experience with them is.
A few years back, actually, I started getting my kids into comics, and I really didn't know much about variants or whatnot. And the funny thing is, the one variant that one of my kids wanted was from Frankie's, as a matter of fact. And for a store to kind of grow and market their variants comics, they definitely need to have a name and establishment to be trusted whenever you're going to be ordering, variants or slabs or something, or dealing with them at a higher price kind of way. So I guess my experience was just as a consumer before I started making comics, but again, it really was kind of one of those things that I had to start looking into because my kids did like variants. I was personally the type of that would go into a comic store and just pick up a comic.
So, I mean, the way I feel, and maybe I'm a little bit different, is that I thought they had really cool variants.
Yeah,
And they had some Cowboy Bebop variants, they had some Gun Honey stuff, and other shops had them too. But they also had their own exclusives.
yes,
Cool. I'll pick up these two over here that I can get over at KRS or Comic Mint, but then I'm going to combine it with also what Frankie's Comics has. And I'm like, man, these comics are really cool. And the first time I ordered some variants from them, because I was familiar with variants before, and I'm like, man, they really package this well. And for me, it's very upsetting because I want businesses to do well. I'm a rooter for small businesses. I'm a rooter for family business. I consider, I mean, maybe this will be a little controversial, but even if you're doing $10 million, you could be a family small business. I
right,
understand, oh, you're doing $10 million, you're not a small business. But if you have 20 employees and you're in North Carolina and half of your employees are your family or your kids' friends, I consider you to be a small family business. And I'm
right,
not rooting for you to fail. Same way I'm not rooting for Midtown Comics, which probably has about 100 employees, to fail either. And I consider that to be a small business versus a company like Amazon, which has 60,000 employees. So my experience is that I've always had a good experience with them. They've always given me good books, clean books, 9.6s or above. And now I realize that a small business has failed or is in dire position. I don't want to say they failed; they might go through restructuring, but that's how I feel. As a consumer, as somebody who is also on the hook for some books, about 50, $60 worth of books from them. And so it's a very, very, very upsetting thing for me. And it's not the money, because I don't want comics to fail. I don't
Yeah.
want a shop to fail. And it sounds weird because if the shop fails, and I know people say, oh, we're not comic shops on Kickstarter, but don't you want a shop in every part of the comic industry to work? And that's just how I feel. And
And the
I don't
thing that I've always championed was, LCSs are the cornerstone of comics, really. I know I found comics through comic stores. My kids were introduced to comics through comic stores. And I think 90% of the people are introduced through comic stores. So to see them struggle is kind of a hard thing. Frankie was definitely a unique entity in its own, because it did start building up a name, especially with those variant comics. So for someone that built up a name so swiftly, I guess you could say, for it to start waning down the way it did is troublesome for the industry, because you kind of never want to see that cornerstone fail. This is where a lot of people go, and a lot of people trust are some of these comic stores that are building up a name. So seeing it go down, it's definitely heartbreaking.
Yeah, so let's actually talk about this a little bit, because this is also what I feel is a problem. Is obviously, I'm gonna just give some data for those who don't know. They owe about $1 million worth of debt and bankruptcy. So the way bankruptcy works is that there's two ways bankruptcy goes in the most simplest forms. Either you have what is known as a restructuring. So if a company is big enough and you have a 60,000 person company, the government doesn't want the company to go out of business, and so you file a Chapter 11, and you might go through a restructuring, which means that you might sell off bad assets, your debt might get negotiated, and then the company might continue onward in a new realm, right? Because the worst thing is that if you employ a lot of people, yeah, you don't want all those people. Some of those people might lose their job, but let's say half those people lose their job, at least half those people kept their job, and the company gets back on the right track. That's one version of a bankruptcy. The other is that the company completely sells off assets, it pays down its debtors, it pays down what it owes, and everything's gone, and then the company goes out of business. And if the company owes 200,000 and they only paid off if they owe $1 million and they paid off 800,000, well, that's that. Everybody gets a piece of that on a percentage pro basis. So I don't know which way Frankie's is going, but they owe $1 million and they owe 200,000 to Penguin Random House. I think they owe some money to a few artists. I think they owe some money to Marvel. They owe some money to PayPal and Simple Pay and another Simple Pay, or like a WePay. I'm not exactly sure, but those numbers are pretty high up. The top 20 people are actually listed as creditors on Bleeding Cool, and then they owe, I think, like another like 6,000 customers books. And so it's a very complicated thing, and I don't know which way they're going. And also, what happens in a bankruptcy, from my understanding at least, and don't quote me, I'm not a lawyer, is that a trustee is appointed. So somebody either from the bank or somebody else or somebody is appointed, where all financial transactions have to go through that person. So they can't just simply say, well, we like person A over here. Here's $1 million. Oh, we ran out of money. It has to be more fair. And so that's kind of what's going on. But for me, now when I buy a variant, and I'm going to use a name and hopefully they're not going to mind, but Comic Mint, how do I know if Comic Mint is stable? And it's a real issue, I feel, where if I'm ordering a variant in the back of my head, how do I know? And trust has been somewhat violated, I feel. And I think it's a real issue in that regard.
And that's the real problem right there. I mean, whenever you're starting up a comic store or even a comic line, a lot of people don't really think about the finances or how to manage it. If you're getting into the areas that they were in, which is basically variant comics, because that's really where they seem to be making their name.
It's a very
hiring artists. filtering out these comics and then bringing more in and kind of juggling, if you will, for lack of terms. They have just not only what's in the store, but they're doing online and whatnot. There are so many aspects that they had to juggle. I don't know where it fell apart because I wasn't in, the room personally, but to see a comic store kind of fall and owing this amount of money, it does lead other people to say, who's going to be next? How did it happen?
It's also complicated because you have two sides of this. Obviously, Penguin Random House, it sucks they lost $200,000, but I have less sympathy for Penguin Random House, and I'll say it. I got no problem getting controversial because Penguin Random House, $200,000 for them is very different than an artist who did a variant for them and is out $8,000, who wouldn't say is struggling, but $8,000 for a cover artist like Ivan Tao is probably worth a lot more because Ivan Tao doesn't have as much money as Penguin Random House has. Right. Where the employee of Penguin Random House did not feel that $200,000 loss. They're not happy about it, but the pain is not the same. I think everybody would agree on that point. Hopefully, we would all agree. I mean, I don't think I said anything controversial in that regard. But also the people who are feeling the pain is if you spent $60 and you're owed $60 worth of books, you don't have your books. Tracking down those books can be very difficult. Now they could be more expensive, they could be cheaper, either way. And what they basically said is if we have your books, we're gonna send them to you. If we don't, we're gonna find you a replacement. And also, if you were getting a book graded, they had a problem with their CGC account and a variety of other stuff. And so that's kind of what's going on here too, is that as a customer, I am definitely feeling pain too, because $60 is a lot of money. I mean, it's not going to change the trajectory of my life, but I could have bought the books that I wanted from Comicsman or KRS Comics, or I could have bought them off of eBay or anywhere else if I had my $60, which I did not get that book. And they say they're going to get me a replacement of some type, but what does that look like? And my name is D, not Z, and they're starting with Z going all the way up, reverse alphabet, for people to find in their books. So,
and I think really that's where it hits the hardest. Are the consumers are going to be the people are going to be thinking, well, if this happened to me this time, it could happen to me again. Why would I want to spend my hard-earned money if I can't trust exactly for something like that? This is what really hurts is that outlook from those common customers.
I don't think it's an if. I think it's a when.
Yeah, right.
Meaning that I couldn't tell you the next one, right? I can't tell you the next failure, but you and me both know there's going to be a next failure. It could be tomorrow. It could be a year from now. It could be 3 years from now. It could look something similar to this. It could look something completely different. And the question becomes, though, is that how do I, as a consumer, avoid those pitfalls, right? Like, because I wasn't privileged to any information from Frankie's. They looked like they were doing great. They looked like, hey, we got this variant, this variant, this variant. We got this over here. We're partnering with these people over here. And they looked amazing. And why in my right mind would I ever think, and feel free to challenge me on this, why would I think that they would be in a dangerous position as a company or be irresponsible? I mean, should I have thought that? And that's what I'm curious on your end, what you think, because you're more of an outsider looking in. Should I have been, skeptical of Frankie's Comics and their practices when they looked clean, they looked professional?
I don't think you should have. Like I said, the hardest thing is going to be the way that the customers look at the industry after this. It's like, are you going to want to buy that comic right there in front of you as opposed to getting it online? Are you going to want to be going out to the conventions instead of, ordering something off Kickstarter or, another LCS that's established? It's going to lead to a lot of questions to those consumers. But the thing about it is, building a brick and mortar and then an online establishment was hard to do. And for this to happen, it's gonna probably send ripples into the industry for quite a while.
Yeah. So let's actually talk about this, because obviously, I mean, this affects a lot of things. So obviously, this affects my business, where I do a lot of pre-sales, and I explicitly make it clear, saying, "Hey, this could take 6 to 8 weeks. I'm going to
Right.
get you your book. I'm not running away. I am pretty accessible. I mean, 3 or 4 times a week, I'm live on air, and I'm not that hard to find. And if somebody really wants my phone number, I will give them my phone number, and they can call me up. In which that I'm not that hard to find. I understand why people want their books. I understand why people get really, really upset when it's not there on a particular day. I completely understand, and I am extraordinarily sympathetic, because not everybody comes from the world that we're in, where I'm used to waiting 3 months for a book. I'm used to ordering a book 90 days in advance. But a lot of people are not used to that. A lot of people don't understand that, hey, I just outlaid $120. Where the hell's my book? And
Right.
so I'm well aware when I'm outlaying money, and I outlaid money in July, and I'm getting a card autographed probably in a week. So, and I had no problem outlaying $120. I didn't even think about it, right? But some people don't understand that, or they say, hey, why is it not here in 2 days? Amazon delivers in 2 days. And so it's really just, and I think this affects Kickstarter, because I think people are going to say, wait a second, like, if this happened here, and then when's the next one? When's the next one? When's the next one? Like, I think people's light bulbs go off a little bit.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that creators have to deal with, as well as LCSs. You have to kind of be spot on as much as possible, and as translucent as possible. I've always told people who are gonna buy something off Kickstarter or any crowdfunding, do a little bit of homework into who you're buying it from. I don't want to I don't want to bad talk any creators online or anything like that, but I'm a great example of that. I put out.
I'll mention a name that's a relatively safe name to mention. A guy named Drew Ford. Drew Ford unfortunately passed away. Rest in peace. But Drew Ford was 2.5 years late, and was really hard on communication. And I don't mean to speak ill of somebody who passed away, but when somebody is really hard on communication, hard to track down, and then that's your first thing that you've backed, and then you get your book, and you're like, hey, where's the stretch goals? And then you find out that a lot of chicanery is going on, with it.
Well,
Not a good experience, and you feel like the wool was pulled over your eyes.
exactly, but and like I was saying, I don't want to throw myself overboard, but on my first 4 books, I pretty much backed it within a few weeks of the Kickstarter going down, finishing up. This last one, I've had a lot of problems. It's been 3 months, I think, now, and I'm still waiting on a cover, and I'm finally getting all that artwork put together. But on top of that, I had so much personal problems. But the way I tell people is like, look, I've got a show that you can see me weekly. If you have any questions, just come and ask me. How many other Kickstarter, crowdfunder are going to be like that? So it's kind of hard to build that trust. Even with an LCS, nowadays, the LCSs are having so much problems already. So for them to have someone as major as Frankie's Comics to kind of go down whenever they were hitting their stride, it does affect the consumers, because they're going to stop and think about it a time or two.
There's a lot of stuff to talk about, actually. So one of the things in which that, I mean, I don't know how many, what you need. Do you know how many books you need to order with a Marvel variant in order to get a Marvel variant, print number wise? So do you have an idea?
I think I know, but I'm not sure.
What do you think the number is? Just I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I promise.
I think it was 1,000.
It's 1,000 on a virgin, and it's 3,000 on a trade. So minimum. So that's part of the problem, right? Is that you have to order a lot. So if you hire an artist on Marvel's approved list and it's $800 or $900, that's not the issue. That's not the issue. And I don't even think it's that expensive to print 3,000 books in reality. I don't think versus what you're going to make on it, right? I think where the problem becomes is that, great, you have to outlay. You probably know, let's say that it's going to cost you 85 cents or $1 to print those books. So let's say that you print 4,000 books. With art, it's going to run you 4,500, maybe 4,800, give or take, right? With taxes, shipping. I think that's a safe number to use, right? For argument's sake, so $4,800 is not what sinks a company. If you're doing one variant, if you're doing 10 Marvel variants, that's $48,000. And you also now have how many books? Like 4,000? Is it? No, you have 40,000 books, right?
Yep.
So that's what sinks a company, in my opinion, is that the print number is so big. Moving 3,000 books is really hard, even if you have partners like Comic Mint or KRS Comics or Tate's Comics or a bunch of other comic shops, and everybody's taking 300 books here, 400 books there. It's still hard to move 3,000 books collectively, and I think that's part of the problem, is that Marvel has such a high print demand that you need. How the hell can anybody move 3,000 books of the same book, let alone you got a bunch of other people also having their own variants, and in the shop 4 blocks from you has a whole set of different books, and now you're competing. And I think this raises a really complicated question where, how many variants should you have? How many variants do you need? And what is the cost effectiveness of it? And I think this is where they failed, is that if you have 30 variants every single month, you're spending $120,000, $140,000 on variants every single month, and you have what, 120,000 books? I mean, that's way too much merch and way too much money spent.
Well, I mean, again, it's like being a creator, you got to kind of know what your supply and demand is. So being an LCS, you got to kind of figure out, where your supply and demand is as well. Yeah, that's one thing that they should have figured, is how much they could move. And by the time they were where they were, they should have known those numbers. I don't know if...
Do you think the problem is that they could move 2,000 books, but they had to buy 3? And that in order for them to do the Marvel stuff they were doing, and maybe even the DC stuff, they had to play in that big game, and they didn't have the volume, and they were in what is known as a catch-22. So,
yeah, but, I mean, let's say you take a 4,000 order. Let's say you're Frankie's Comics, you take a 4,000 order. Let's say you can't sell all those 4,000. You're not gonna order that without a plan of moving those 4,000. Let's say you come short, it's probably going to be 1,000 or so short. You're not taking a loss of 3,000 every time that you get this print, or else you wouldn't be doing it. So, I mean, I don't think that that's the problem per se. I think it's more of the logistics of overall kind of thing. Maybe they weren't accounting for the shipping, and maybe they weren't accounting for the artist expense.
Did you also think that maybe in 2021 and 2022 they were moving 2,200 copies, and then all of a sudden on a bunch of books they were only moving 1,800? And so do you think that could have been the issue, where all of a sudden their volume changed on what they were moving and they didn't adapt quick enough? Or what was going on is that the 800 books they weren't moving was just stockpiling up, and it was dead, shitty merch, for lack of a better word? Or could it have been that Marvel was raising their prices? Because I mean, it could be a lot of things. And the reason why I bring this up is that there is a point where this is very relevant, I think, to Kickstarter, is that, do you raise your prices on Kickstarter when things get risen up? Do you choose to make less of a margin? Do you choose to go from 4 variants to 6? And I think that's where this is really, really important, is that what lessons can we learn?
Right.
Because I don't know what Frankie's did, but I think they were caught in between a rock and a hard place. Where my take, and the only explanation, is that I think that they wanted to stay in the variant game. They didn't have a choice but to order 3,000 or 4,000 copies, and either the price went up, or artist price went up, or that maybe they thought that they were presented with a better deal, where if they did 15 to 20 new covers, they were going to get a slight discount, but then that stuff wasn't moving, and now all of a sudden you're 300,000 in the hole, and you're only in month 5 of the year. And
yeah, but I don't know. I don't know if the variants are going to be what sank them. If they had millions that they were in debt, do you really think it was the variants that sank them? I mean, like I said, sure, they're going to take a loss on some of those variants, but they're not going to take a loss on the majority of them.
So this is what I think sank them, is that I think that they borrowed money, right? So I do things where I break up a payment into 4 payments using a firm, which is basically buy now, pay later. Now, I have the money, but I do something where I purposely break up payments so that instead of having it in 1 billing cycle, I have it in 2. It's a way how to handle debt. It's a way how to move merchandise. It's a way how to cover me, and give me some agency so I can actually buy double or triple my merch. And all the money's there. All the money I know is going to be there when all the bills are due. But I think what happened with them is that they borrowed money maybe, and they missed a payment, and probably under the terms of missing a payment is the whole thing's due. It could be in these terms, or if you miss 2 or 3 payments, the whole thing's due, and then you get a bankruptcy problem where now you owe $50,000 instead of owing $5,000.
Well, and it could have been like a snowball going down a hill, kind of one problem making another problem, making another. But it's really speculative. I mean, I don't know if it's really the variants that caused the problem. I mean, just because they were known for the variants, it could have been a number of other things.
My take is that it was a variant problem. That's my take. Because if you look at how many variants they have, when you have 177 variants in your back catalog that are still available to buy, and that was at the height. And then I think on the sold out level, they have like 227. If you have 227, and I understand not all of them are Frankie's exclusives. I understand, but that could also be part of the problem too, is that they were taking pieces from Unknown Comics, potentially from Comics Mint, potentially from KRS, and a few others. And so now they're taking 100 books from Comic Mint in their store. They're taking, some stuff from Golden Apple Comics out in California, I think they're at. And so now all of a sudden you have expenditures to them. You have your own stuff, and they might have expenditures to you. And who knows, maybe some of these companies that said, hey, we're going to take 200 copies from you, didn't pay them or said, we're not going to take them. And that could have been the issue too. And this is where it really gets complicated and partnerships get so interesting.
Right.
And and the reason why I want to talk about this, and I think it's so important, is that we don't know exactly what went wrong, but it's clear something went wrong.
Right.
And it's clear that they owed a lot of money. And I think we can all agree that borrowing money to do comics is a really bad idea. Really bad. It's right on Frankie's debtors. I think they owe money to WePay or Simply Play or WeSimple. I think they owe 2 or 3 to them. That's like $150,000. I think they owe like $45,000 to PayPal. I think they owe something to another, borrowing company. They might owe money to SoFi. And all of a sudden, you owe a lot of money in debt. And why were they even allowed to borrow that much money?
I don't know. The funny thing about that is I had a friend who actually borrowed enough money with several different credit cards and other stuff to actually buy a brand new vehicle. And I always wondered, because I never got a credit card like one. So it was always funny.
Poor baby.
It was funny that he could just indebt himself so much. I don't understand how there's not a stopgap somewhere.
I have a very large loan waiting for me from SoFi if I wanted it. I mean, I have a $300,000 line of credit from SoFi.
See, I couldn't
Um,
do that.
I
That temptation would be there.
Oh, no. I haven't touched it. I don't want to touch it. I don't need it. It's funny because a lot of people don't realize is that I ask for money when I don't need it. And guess what? I don't have to touch it. I don't need it. I financially do not need that money. I don't think I will ever need that money. But if God forbid that I do, it's there. It's very important to understand that obviously I have a lot of investments. I run an eBay business that's successful, and there's a reason why they want to lend me money. They want to lend me money because I'm a good risk to return that money and turn that money into a lot more money, and they'll be thrilled. That's why I'm allowed to borrow that much money. I personally don't need the money. I'm cash flow positive. I hate debt. I hate debt in which I don't want to go down that road. I've had college debt, and I'm not interested in doing that ever again, minus a mortgage.
Well, I mean that could have been one of the biggest reasons for them to, like I said, it could have been a snowball kind of thing. I've never dealt with credits, debts, stuff like that. I've always paid in cash, and they also had so many artists that they were paying, so it could have been just them not being able to understand finances. And this is a lot of things with comic stores and creators. They don't understand finances, and they kind of just jump on head first and not expect to pay.
Yeah, no, because it's just interesting, and I mean, I have a very different view in which that for those who don't know, I was slightly joking, but I said I would like to buy them. I would like to buy them before they declare bankruptcy. And a lot of people thought I was joking. Some people were like, why would you want to do that? You should just build your own, Andrew. And what they didn't understand is that I wanted their infrastructure. I just wanted their merch.
Right.
I wanted their infrastructure because I think I could have fixed their problem, turned the business around, and made a lot more money than that. And it basically, they were 12 steps ahead of me where I would want to be if I wanted to do this myself. Because starting something is a pain in the ass versus me taking it over, negotiating the debt out, getting it and getting the whole thing back on track. And I had a plan. I had a plan how to do it. It would have been complete social media. It would have been complete, a lot of live sales, whatnot sales. And it would have been basically liquidating 90% of that store, get a lot of cash, and then rebuild it up. Which would have sufficed a lot of debt. And it would have taken a year to suffice it. It would have been a lot of negotiations. And I think within a year, if they did that and they did complete liquidation where a book that would normally be 30, you sell for 15 straight out. And you just go through a mad dashing liquidation to get a lot of capital to fix the problem.
Yeah, but you don't know if it would have fixed the entirety of the problem.
Oh, I would have put parameters in without a doubt.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it would have fixed the whole thing. And obviously this is easier said than done, but I think they just didn't have cash. And I mean, most debts, I mean, the reason why Toys R Us went bankrupt is that they couldn't compete they had so much debt that they were servicing debt that they couldn't update their infrastructure. They couldn't update their website. Going to Toys R Us, the store was great. The store wasn't the problem with Toys R Us. It was the website. That was the problem. They needed SEO and they needed a lot of help there, and they couldn't put money towards the things they needed because they had a lot of debt. And they were just servicing the debt, not even paying down the debt. So it could have been that with Frankie's too. But I think it's a really important thing to understand that. I think for me, I mean, I was obviously partially joking, but if I was to take them over, the first thing that would have happened is that you need to liquidate 90% of your stock. That's the given because you need capital to deal with problems. I mean, first and foremost, that's just the obvious. I mean, I'm not saying anything intelligent yet. So if anybody thinks I'm smart for stating that, don't. That's just a logical conclusion.
Right.
What they really needed is they needed time and they needed capital. Because I honestly think that if they had 6 months of staying, and if they went through liquidation, and I think if they brought in $400,000, of free cash flow, I think they would not have had to declare bankruptcy. I really don't. That's just my take, and it's controversial, and I don't know all the facts, but I think they could have figured it out. It would have been painful. Don't get me wrong. It would have been beyond painful because a lot of things would have to be sacrificed. But I think they would be in business right now.
Well, I mean, they had a good name in the industry. Like I was saying, I was a common consumer before, starting making my comics, and I had heard about them. I had purchased one or two things because of my kids from them, so it was kind of surprising to me the way it happened. But again, you just never know all the details of that stuff. And I really think it's a shock to the system.
Industry wise. Let's talk about that. Do you think it's more of a shock to the system on the comic book shop end? Do you think it's more of on the consumer end, or do you even think that it's going to ripple a bit through Kickstarter too? Or do you think it's a combination, or where do you think the shock really is?
I think it's going to be the consumers of the LCSs. And like I said, I was a consumer of LCSs just about every other week before I started making my own comic. To hear someone like Frankie's kind of go down, it's kind of like it takes you a second longer. You stop and think about it, and it's sad. But again, from one comic store to another, there are different stories as well. Here in Texas, we've got 2 comic stores that are opening up. New brick and mortars to their chains, where you see other comic stores in other areas kind of go away. So every comic store is a different story, but to hear a named comic store to go down, it's kind of makes you think. It makes you stop in your tracks at least just a minute.
Because I mean, I find that for me, it's just sad because I trusted them. I feel a little bamboozled. Might be a good way to put it, because obviously I lost money, and right. I understand that I lost $50. There are people on that list. I mean, everybody, you can go through the list. If you're a customer, you got a list of what people are actually owed. There are people who are owed like $1,200 worth of comics. Right. So if you're owed $1,200 worth of comics and you're owed 40, there's a big difference between me losing 40 or $50 versus somebody losing 1,200 versus somebody losing $8,000. Big difference between those 3 numbers. And so I am upset because obviously I have a little skin in the game, but more importantly, I also just say a small business just failed in an environment that is tough. And I'm a small business owner. And so I can imagine, and I don't know how you feel about this, and you might feel the same way I do, is that my eBay business does not support my family, but it does change my lifestyle. It changes my income bracket. And so whatever I make from my job, I could stop my eBay business. I would live relatively comfortable with my income from my job, but my fund money, my investment money, the quality of my life can change dramatically.
Right.
Where, the money I make from my eBay can pay for my vacation, it could pay for my car, it could pay for a lot of nice privileges that would be a lot tighter, where I would go on vacation maybe once every 3 years if I just stopped my eBay business versus going on vacation every year. And so I think there is something to be said, and I don't know how you feel, because I think you obviously, your comic stuff is a business and you do, it supports you in a lot of ways. And all of a sudden, if you lost that, you just lost your livelihood. You just lost a quality of life component. And let's say you worked a 9 to 5, and your comic produced you an extra $20,000 a year, it would change the quality of your life.
Right.
And so I am very sympathetic and I can't imagine losing your job, losing everything you built, all the money you put in, and now that being taken away. And so it's very upsetting for me. And because I can imagine that if somebody took 20, 30, 40 grand out of my mouth indefinitely, I would be distraught. I mean, I would be in pain. It's a very painful thing. And who's to say it can't happen? I mean, let's be realistic. In today's economy, anything could happen.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You have economic kind of faculties that happen without you being able to do anything about it. But I don't think it really was the surrounding things. They had so much. They had a name. You know that they were pretty well known. They had a foothold in the industry. Um, there's a lot of LCSs out there that people don't know. You know, uh, here in the DFW, I guarantee you about 90% of them nobody knows. But Frankie's was more of a popular name in comics than most LCSs. It is hard. It is hard whenever anybody goes, under, because again, it's going to affect the people who are working there. My comics definitely affect my day to day. So that's something that I try to keep on track of. But again, you got to know what's going in and what's going out, and kind of where the industry is. I mean, tomorrow you might have AI taking over everything, and then I'm out of a job. you don't know.
Yeah, and you also feel because I mean I tend to sell a lot of books. I sell a lot of different books. I don't create anything at the moment. At some point I will, but who's to say when that will be? Could be tomorrow. Could be 5 years from now. I haven't decided. Obviously, right now my eBay business is the focus, and I'm not about to start making changes to something that's working. But I've adapted, and it's been well known. And I love Zenoscope. But Zenoscope used to be about 70, 80% of what I sold on eBay. They're now more like 20%. And I brought in things like Mount Olympus. I brought in things like, things from uh, Power Hour is a good one. Merc Mag's another one. I brought in things like Big Dog Inc. is coming in soon. Dustin Brunel's company, Ethereal, is coming in soon. And I'm always adding some stuff from Steve Hurley, some Steph Wilsons are coming in soon. Hopefully they're coming in soon. I would like them in by before 2024. So Steve, you're watching, give me my fucking books, man. But anyway, but I tend to sell a lot of books. And so I've obviously diversified. I'm hoping to sell some totally rad books at some point. And I might be selling some comic exposure books. So, and there's a few others. There's a few others that I'm missing here. But my point is that I've obviously adapted. And I think
Yeah.
that's a real issue where I think the variant market, and this is the whole thing, and I know we don't know exactly what caused the cause of this, but I think the variant market has gotten out of hand in a lot of ways. And I think to some degree, every comic shop has a variant now. Every comic shop has multiple variants, whether that's a big print run, a small print run. I think that there's companies like Mount Olympus that does almost exclusive variants. I mean, Mount Olympus does 65 and under. I just bought a book for $30 that's a 15 or less.
Yeah.
It's going to be a sick hollow for you. It's Fallout. It's a Nuka-Cola. It's going to be a sick book. It's going to be a sick book, man. I'm so excited. I'm going to probably keep it for myself. Just don't tell my mother. She's going to watch this. She's going to be, you're going to sell it, Andrew, now. I know you're going to sell it. I'm going to make you sell it. But again, I think it's gotten out of hand, and I'm curious what you think, because I think that definitely contributed. I think that contributed, and I think this is a lesson. I think this is a lesson for a lot of people to say, you have to be paying attention. I'm not saying stop. I'm saying you got to pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the variant cover market is just crazy. It's bound to bust sooner or later. Tell you the truth, I'm considering just one cover on my next book. So, I mean, I'm not exactly sure if I'm at that point yet to figure out whether I'm going to jump on just one cover or go to 6 like I did before. But the thing about it is, you do have to adjust. You do have to figure things out. Right now, I was putting out, 5 books the past 2 years. I think I'm going to go to a model where it's going to be 1 or 2 books the next year. Maybe 1 book the year after that.
Do you think that also the economy do you also think the fact that, and this is just my thought, right? And I don't know what your Kickstarter, backing looked like and your comic book buying looked like. And I'm a bad example because I just went through an expansion, but I went through an expansion in a complicated time. For those who don't know, and I'm going to just briefly explain, I had a surgery and I got to spend a lot of time at home recovering. And I purposely planned my expansion when I didn't have to go into my office 2 days a week while I was recovering from my surgery, so I could actually spend time laying in my bed looking at my business. It was a very tactful move, and it was the right move. So I'm a bad example of anybody asking behavior in comics, but I'm curious what your behavior in COVID was during with Kickstarters. Were you backing more or less, or was it somewhere in between, or were you just getting into the industry, which means that you might not be a good sample for this question?
Well, I think I was getting into the industry, being my first 2 years in comics. I mean, I haven't hit the second year mark until
You you
November here coming up soon.
you know where
So
my
it's like,
question's going, right?
do it?
You know where my question's going, right?
I
So
believe so. Yeah.
the point is that my experience and my thought process, and feel free to challenge me, is that I think a lot more people backed a lot more Kickstarters in the middle of COVID, start of COVID, because people were home, they wanted entertainment, they wanted to support the industry. There was more things out there that were more interesting because everything that somebody wanted, if you wanted a romance comic, it was there, and there was 10 of them there. If you wanted a comic where it was just fighting and it was ridiculous and there was no story, but it was just like awesome and it looked stupid fun, it was there. If you
Right.
wanted a horror book, it was there. If you wanted an anthology, you got it. Anything you possibly wanted, if you wanted a space opera, it was there. And people had more money, not necessarily because they had more money, but because they were spending it less elsewhere. Meaning,
Right.
if you were spending $50 at the bar and now you can't go to the bar, you have $50.
Right.
Your wages didn't increase, or maybe they did. I don't know. Or maybe you got a government check for 1,200. I don't know. Basically, what happened is that you people had more money, or they had more freedom because Netflix was $10 still. So it's not like, and there's only so much Netflix you could watch. And so, do you feel that that also could have contributed, where a lot of businesses received a lot of boosting up that really wasn't? I don't want to say it was fake because it was artificial because there was less competition
It
for
was.
business.
I do agree. I agree. Whenever like everybody was at home, it was easier to spend online as opposed to going out nowadays where everybody's kind of used to going out again. I think the comic industry is going to hurt because of inflation right now. Right now we're going through a lot of stuff. I think it's going to make that market just a little bit skinnier, I guess you could say. But
Leaner might be a good word, right?
yeah, but I mean the thing about it is I don't think comics are ever going to go anywhere. I think it's just going to kind of weed out some of the weaker people, if that's kind of okay to say. I think it's going to make some of the people stronger and understand that it is more of a fight to stay in the industry.
You do
But
also feel that, sorry to interrupt you, but we were speaking, and I think it's fine to mention this before. We were speaking about how I had a weird summer finding interviews and people to talk to. You had a really weird summer, and haven't really spoken to anybody else about their summer and weirdness, and even work wise or even creative. But if you and me both had a weird creative summer where I struggled to find interviews all summer long, you obviously had some health issues, and then also some stuff just wasn't working out. And now things are back on track for me in a lot of ways, and I think some stuff is back on track for you. It could
yeah,
also be that we have been in a weird patch where maybe, I mean, starting in June all the way up to August, for those 3 months, I had a hard time doing work and in my show. And it wasn't terrible. And now I'm doing 4, 5, 6 interviews now a week sometimes, and it's awesome. And I love it. But I'm also understanding that was abnormal. And it could very well be that we just had a really weird 3 months. And it could be that maybe you and me are looking at this all wrong. Maybe it's been a weird, 2023 collectively. I mean,
I think it really was. I think it was, the adjustment of getting out of everything that had happened. I think everybody started figuring out stuff, then started getting that culture shock kind of thing. And then everybody took a step back for the summer. I think that's really what it was. There were ups and downs, definitely, and you could tell that this summer was one of them. I think a lot of people more are coming out and saying, hey, we need to get to that business as usual kind of thing, and they're struggling to get back there. Finding that especially the comic field is a little bit more crowded than what it used to be. So, I mean,
so let me ask you that. Do you think it's more crowded creation wise? Do you think it's more crowded just even content creation wise?
yeah,
Do you think it's also more crowded with people running shops? And I'm gonna throw something even crazier out there, just not any more brick and mortar, but online spaces. I mean, I run an eBay store.
right.
It competes to some degree with a comic shop. I mean,
And whatnot. Whatnot's huge right now, and people who are on eBay, who are online with their comic shops, they have to compete with Whatnot, and that's a massive, massive entity that you have to compete with. There's that culture shock of everybody coming back to work and business as usual, and then finding out that it's not business as usual. You do have this competition that you have to make those adjustments to. These are some of the things that people don't realize. Sometimes what worked for you before the pandemic might not just be working for you now.
yeah, no, because this is where I think this is also interesting is about Frankie's and going back to all this is that I think something changed. I think the whole industry changed. I think culture has changed in this, and I think that's part of it too. It has to be. I mean, I could be all wrong. It could be that somebody took out $1 million loan against the company, and that's why they failed. I mean, it could be that simple. It really can be. That's not off the table. It could be that, but I don't think it's that. I think that would be an outlier. I don't anticipate that. If it's that, well, I'll take the loss in that one. First round's on me if it's that, everybody. But I think that's a relatively safe bet, right? I think that's a relatively safe bet, but it could very well be that it is what you were just saying. Because the reason why I want to talk about this is that I think that people have to start saying what went wrong here, and
Right.
how do we both,
Learn.
I'm a comic shop. How do I not become the next one? Or
Exactly.
if I'm going to be the next one, if this is going to happen and maybe 1 out of every 100 shops, if I'm that 100th shop on the list, maybe I could delay this for 5 years. If it's inevitable, at least I could slow it down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like I said, there is those adjustments that you have to take for granted. I mean, that a lot of people take for granted. Whenever I came out of the pandemic, I kind of hit the ground running, jumping into the comic industry, creation industry, if you will. This wasn't exactly something that I planned on, but whenever I did see, I guess the money that was in it at that time, it was like, hey, why not? There were areas and stuff that started tapering off and kind of slowed me down. And nowadays, I'm like trying to catch myself from not running half as fast as I was back then. So this is why I'm like, trying to start my show. I'm on episode 7, and I'm trying to focus a little bit more online and stuff. But the thing about it is, a lot of people don't have their eyes open to the adjustments that they need to make.
I think that's true, and I also think that a lot of people are also looking for the next big thing versus just stabilization. I
Oh yeah,
mean, I've made a determination where my goal in the next year or 2 years is just to build out a huge content library. I'm not worrying about views. I'm not worrying about pushing out like crazy. And what I'm betting on, and it could be a wrong bet, is just to have 2, 3, 4, 5,000 videos of pretty good content, not perfect content. Obviously, I think that I run an okay show. I mean, obviously, I'm not some big podcaster who has 7-figure contracts and has a studio, but I think I do a decent enough job. And all of a sudden, what I'm hoping for is that you have 4, 5, 6, 7,000 videos. And so it's like, okay, this person has 7,000 videos. They have a lot of content. They've done a lot of people who have been on their show, and this person's legit. I've said this before. I said it at the start of COVID, almost 4 years ago. I said there's going to be 3 things that dictate the future. It's exclusivity, it's big content library, and when you can watch it is going to dictate media. So meaning that if you can only watch WWE Network on Peacock, that's it. WWE Network on Peacock has a huge library. They have tens of thousands of hours. That's a huge library, and you can pretty much customize what you want to watch. So if you just want to watch Kevin Nash all day, you can watch Kevin Nash all day. If you really want to. I was just listening to Kevin Nash's podcast. That's why he's on my mind. But not the point here. You can really customize your viewership in a lot of ways. And I think that's what's going to dictate things. I really do. And that's where I think variants get interesting. I mean, that's why the whole Frankie's thing is so interesting. But I agree that, I'm taking a bet on the idea of people are going to come to my YouTube channel and say, there's 7,000 videos here. What is on this YouTube channel for me?
Right.
And those are 7,000 potential entry points into my YouTube channel. And that's what I'm betting on. And other people have a different marketing strategy. But if I'm going to be here for the next 30 years, what do I care if I go nice and slow? Because all of a sudden you have 10,000 videos, and it took me 5 years to get to 10,000 videos. And yeah, sure, somebody else got, 1,000 subscribers in a year, but I'm going to be here for the next 30 years. So I don't really care if I'm a little bit slower, if I then have a huge amount of content that people can come, and then monetization comes, and then a variety of other stuff comes, and now I have a lot of entry points. So that's just my theory. But again, that's a different strategy completely. That is a long-term strategy. And I think it's actually the right one. I do. I could be wrong, but that's where I'm going, and I'm willing to take that risk.
Right.
Because what I've learned in my life is that if you grow so fast, you can also recede fast.
Right.
If you grow at a very steady pace, you're probably going to grow at a steady pace for a while. It's very hard.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it really depends on what your personal goals are. I mean, not everybody's trying to run just as fast as they can. Some people are content being in the industry and slowly building it up. Me personally, I'm not worried about me. If that's percent, I'm really trying to build up my kids. My store isn't mine. It's my son building up his eBay store. I title him hardest working kid in comics. Half the posts I put are of him. And it's one of those things that I don't really see myself doing it 30 years. But if I am, hey. But I do see my son doing it in 30 years.
I mean, I'm 30. That's why.
Yeah,
so
you're younger, way younger than me.
There's a difference where I anticipate me being in the media space, me being in the comic book space. I'm going to be an investor for life in some fashion or another. I'm a stock investor. I'm an equity investor. I'm a crypto investor. I'm a bond investor. I invest in real estate. I am in this space for life. It is my nature. It will, and then my kids are going to inherit a lot of wealth. They're going to inherit probably a trust. Hell, they might even inherit a private equity fund. It might be coming soon. So I'm in this space. And then with media, my kids are going to get to know their father, in ways that they're going to look back on YouTube. And there's going to be 20, 30, 40,000 videos. And they're going to see their father when he was 20 and hear their father all the way up to when he was 70. And it's going to be a very interesting thing where it's going to be 50 years of content. So I'm not, but I'm also 30 now. So there's a difference when you're 30. I started media and I started doing a lot of YouTube stuff when I was like 21. So I've been in this space for a long time.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of content that's private that I technically could release at any given point, and I just choose not to because it doesn't fit the narrative, but it's still there. And so it's on YouTube servers. It's just a matter of what do I want to do with it. So my point that I'm getting at here is that you're older. When you're older, it's a lot different when
Yeah.
you're younger. A lot different. It's easier for me to pivot in a lot of ways. Except the Zenescope thing was really hard. That took a while.
I believe it. But I mean, it's like one of those things. You've got to adjust. You got to figure out what your goals are. And you got to set that path. And whenever you start that path, you got to understand that there's adjustments everywhere.
It was a big adjustment, man. It was
whether it's the comic creation, whether it's learning finance, whether it's learning how to create a show on YouTube, which I'm starting to do. And, you know, these are adjustments. I never expected to do any of this stuff. You know, I expected to work my 9 to 5 until I was like 70 and then just kind of retire. But God said no. Said no. You know, I made the comics that I did because of my kids and of a happy accident. And it was at a time that I needed that happy accident. So I adjusted not only, you know, my comic career, but my life, my kids' lives. And like I said, a lot of creators get into it and they don't want to adjust. They don't want to play anyone else's game. They just have blinders on, and that's their choice. But, you know, there's a lot of adjustments that you have to make out there.
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, I am just figuring it out, and I think that's something that's massively important. And obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on with the whole thing with Frankie's, and I think it's a wake-up call. I really think it's a wake-up call. I think anybody in comics, you know, I think if you're a publisher, you're a comic house, you're an imprint. I think if you're DC Marvel to some degree, I think you have to pay attention. I think for your fellow comic shops, big or small, I think that there is relevance to start paying attention to all this, and I think that there is a real moment, a teaching moment. What are there? 4 moments that make a hero, and then Deadpool shoots. It's a great scene. But all jokes aside, I really think that there is a moment for people to start paying attention, saying, "Look, you got to make those adjustments, and you got to pay attention because a major company that looked financially stable just went under and is now in bankruptcy, and they might come back, they might not, but who's to say that you as a major publisher can't go bankrupt? I mean, Marvel went bankrupt for all we know. I mean, what was that, in the 1990s they went bankrupt? Yeah. So, and that wasn't that long ago. What was that, 26 years ago, give or take?
Yeah.
I mean, 26 years sounds like a long time. It's not. It's not really a long time. I mean,
the life of a business now.
I mean, so, and who's to say that what is it? Aftershock almost went bankrupt.
Yeah.
I mean that. What was that? 2 years ago. I mean, you can make an argument that Dark Horse almost went bankrupt, right? But they sold themselves. Yeah. I mean, so who's to say that Titan couldn't go under? Who's to say that another company couldn't go under? And why does it just have to be a comic shop? I mean, any comic shop can go under. Any business can go under. Who's to say that Diamond can't go under? I mean, is that off the table? Am I saying something that is not true?
I don't think so. I mean, I've heard rumors of Disney being sold to Apple, so you never know.
That's coming. That's coming in 5 years. You will be buying me a beer.
All I'm saying, Apple was dominating the world, or Disney was dominating the world, and now you're hearing a lot of that talk. So
no. That's a real possibility, Paul.
I'm not saying it ain't, but I mean,
think about it though. Think about it, right? Let's actually talk about this because this is so relevant. What are the 4 major mergers in the last 4 years? Well, do you know them off the top of your head?
No.
There's only 4. There's only 4 major mergers in media that have legitimately signified where media is going. There's 4.
I don't know. TNT,
AT&T, Warner Bros. Discovery. That's 1. 2 is Crunchyroll being bought by Sony for $1.2 billion. That's a big one. That's a really big deal. Three is the three just happened. WWE fusing with Endeavor to create TKO and UFC to forge a $21 billion market cap company. And the fourth one that's coming probably next year is the acquiring of Activision by Microsoft for $70 billion. Those are the four. Those four tell us everything. They tell us everything about media rights, meaning we are entering the age of media conglomerates. So, what does that mean for everything else? That means that everything else needs to form into a media conglomerate or get associated with one really quickly.
Right.
So if all of a sudden six creators form together a indie image, they would have more buying power and they would actually be more stable than being out on their own. Now, I'm not saying don't be out on your own. There's nothing wrong with running a business if it has no debt and you being out on your own. Like what I'm doing right now, I don't need to form partnerships, but maybe I do need to form partnerships. Now that I mean, maybe if I had partnerships, it would actually stabilize and create safety in the business
Right.
and create an additional safety net. Or conversely, I'm a one-man team and I don't need to do this if I don't want to.
Right.
It creates a lot of fun money and a little bit more of opportunity. It doesn't change the quality of my life, meaning I won't go if I don't do my eBay business. It's not like it produces me $1 million. So that's what I think is. I mean, that's what I think. I don't know what you think.
Well, the funny thing is that the thought of creators banding together, indie creators banding together and making another version of Image, excuse me, has been kind of floated out there recently, and a lot of people have been talking about it. And it's like, why wouldn't you merge with other creators? Why wouldn't you create a marketing system around the country that isn't there at the moment for indie creators? If you had 5 indie creators, let's say one from Texas, one from Florida, one from New York, Chicago, California, and they banded together where they were selling and representing all of their books in a catalog to all of these different markets, why wouldn't you want to do this? But then again, there are those people that want to be on their own and that they don't.
I can tell you why. I can tell you why this hasn't worked. It's a 3-letter word. It's called ego, meaning that.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you want to be in business, don't you have to let go of your ego a little bit?
So
there's got to be the right person to lead this. I agree with that. But the fact of the matter is, now is the time for an indie creator group to actually break out. Now is the time where the comic book industry, the main comic book industry, is kind of lowered down a little bit.
I don't think that's true either. I think, and I said this with Mindy Wheeler, and I'll say it again, and this is controversial. I actually think Marvel and DC are the smartest companies in the world right now. You laugh at me.
I wonder why you're saying this, because talking to LCS.
Can I please?
Sure, go ahead.
So this is my thought process. I think they figured out that the real money is in video games. The real money is in movies. The real money is in merchandise. So I put up a post. I said, if you pick up a copy of Marvel or DC, you are reading a future script for a movie. And Eric Larson, I think it was Eric Larson, was like, no. And I'm like, what do you mean, no? What do you mean, no? It was a very pleasant conversation. It wasn't nasty. I like Eric Larson. But my point that I was getting at is that I think
What book?
What
book? What book are you picking up that is going to be a future movie? Let me tell you, the writing.
No. I'm going to finish my point.
Okay, go ahead.
So my argument to Eric Larson is that first off, it was a joke. It was a little bit of a joke, but there was some truth to it. Meaning that if we look behind the thought process, is that I think what they're doing in Marvel and DC is that they basically put out an idea of a story of 6 issues. They say, how is this received? How does this look? Because what are comics? They are storyboards, essentially. So it is a high-end storyboard to test an idea. And so now they can test a character, see how that character reacts with fans, good, bad, and different, see how it looks, see how it acts, see how Harley Quinn acts, right? We have a Harley Quinn adult television show, and I think that came directly out of a comic because somebody decided to write Harley Quinn as a very sassy individual and
It came
kind of
out of a comic?
the Harley Quinn. Yeah.
No.
No,
You know where that came out of?
absolutely.
That didn't come out of the comic. That came out of the popularity of Harley Quinn on the
No,
big screen on Suicide Squad.
I disagree completely.
How?
I think Amanda Connors and Jimmy, what's her husband's last name? I can't think of it. I think that they started writing Harley Quinn a little bit more, liberated and a little bit more crazy and a little bit more that. And then that's where I think that evolved out of. Absolutely.
That was her and Suicide Squad.
So the adult television show? No. My point is that where I'm going with this is that the idea originated in all of that. I even think the Suicide Squad stuff originated out of that, where they tested ideas. Really? Why do you disagree with me? Why do you disagree with me on that? Because this is my theory, is that the whole point of why I think Marvel and DC are the smartest companies is that they test ideas in comics, they see what sticks, and then they monetize that in two of the most highly productive and economically lucrative concepts, which are movies, which make billions of dollars, and video games. And the video games that they could put them in are both Xbox games, PC games, anything on a console, or they could put it in a mobile game, and then they merchandise the shit out of it. And we're all paying for it.
Let's say for a second, let me say for a second that let's say that that's true. If that is true, it's not working.
Why is it not working?
Because all the movies in the past year kind of tanked.
I mean, sure, but the whole thing is that
so it's not working.
So when we say they tanked, did they tank in the box office where they lost money, or is it the idea that let's look at this, right? So let's look at the last 5 years. There's been a bunch of good stuff that's come out that's made money.
You can't say that. Infinity Gauntlet was based off Infinity Gauntlet. That was stuff that was years and years ago.
Sure.
Okay, so none of this stuff has come from comics nowadays.
Oh, no. My point, though, is that obviously there is positions on this where I will backtrack a little bit. Obviously, it's a bit of a joke, but they are testing ideas very cheaply, is the point of it. So
they're not working, though. There's nothing that they're doing in the comics that is working. And I hate to say it because I love comics. Absolutely love comics.
Is it not? But the thing that where I'm going with this, though, is that so they created, a bad movie, sure. But the way I
view bad movie?
What?
Bad movie?
Obviously, use a bad movie as in a position. But my point that I'm thinking is that, and where I'm going with this, is that they create content. Not every piece of content is going to work, right? We look at Disney, technically. I mean, look at how much Star Wars comics come out. You can't sit here and tell me that some of that isn't, driven out of the comics of what they've done with Ahsoka. Some of it's not out of The Mandalorian. Some of that's not out of the Book of Boba Fett. I mean, they're testing and they're storyboarding the shit out of everything. And then when we look at this, and also the point is that I'll give you an example. I mean, I'll use a better example that I think will prove my point. There's going to be a Batman Who Laughs last movie from Dark Metal. That thing is the script for that book at some point, for not the book, for the movie at some point. Whenever
is it a live action? I could see an animated. I can't see a live action.
The point I'm getting at is that I think they're testing it, and I don't think they're just testing movies. I think they're testing video games. I think they're testing mobile games. I think they're testing merch, and I think we're all paying for it. Where even if they only recoup 50% of their revenue, it's still cheaper. It's an IP farming system. That's why I think DC and Marvel are the smartest companies in the world.
Even if they were doing it, it's not working for them. Because nothing's coming out shining lately.
I mean, sure, but it has worked in the last 20 years more than it has.
You can't say that. Most of the stuff that has worked was stuff that was already done 10 years ago. Comics that were done 10 years ago. They're pulling from that, and that's what was working. Now they're trying to gravitate into the newer stuff, and it's not working.
On a merch level? Are you at it? No, on a merch level and in mobile games and on video games, it's killing it.
What are you talking about on a merch? The toys? The toys ain't working.
What?
The toys ain't working.
Oh, toys are a big thing. I mean, they're killing it.
No, they're not. Okay, so the merch for Blue Beetle is probably going to find landfills. The merch for the past like 6 movie are probably going to find landfills. They're taking a bath on the merch.
No. But if you look at Harley Quinn merch collectively,
Harley Quinn is popular. I mean, she's like Wolverine.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not anything that they're doing in the past 5 years in the comics that's working for her. It's what they base Suicide Squad. It was Margot Robbie that really brought her out.
So, but where did that originate from? It originated from
Batman the animated series. It originated from.
I don't know though fully, because if you read the Harley Quinn comics back 2014 to 2015, before that movie, a lot of those stuff was incorporated into Suicide Squad. The sassiness of Harley Quinn.
Harley Quinn was always that way.
No, she wasn't though.
That's well, look at the animated series where she debuted. She was
not. I mean, we're going to disagree. See, this is why Marvel and DC are the smartest comic.
But okay, again, let's say Harley Quinn was 1 for you. What's another one?
I mean, what's another one? As far as
that's it.
No, it's not it. It's not
that's it.
I mean, I'll throw another thing. Guardians of the Galaxy. So a lot of what they've done with Guardians of the Galaxy is that
it wasn't from the comics.
No.
That was James Gunn.
We've incorporated a lot of stuff in the comics that have come out recently in a lot of these mobile games. And these mobile games.
That was from James Gunn. That was from Guardians of the Galaxy 1.
So Marvel releases all of these mobile games, right?
And after Guardians of the Galaxy 1.
Yeah, they're still releasing it. I think the 3rd one came out.
Yeah, but it's not stuff that they're pulling from the comics. They're pulling it from what was working in the movies.
But where I'm going with this is that they do incorporate a lot of stuff, and they test ideas in comics. They absolutely do.
I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying that it's not working if that's what they're doing.
But what you have to realize is that they test it, and then it takes 10 years to make a movie from something. That's exactly what they do. And what they do is they merchandise it. And this is why when you pick up a copy of Marvel, you are reading a future movie script. That's it.
8 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a while to build a movie.
No, because everything's tanky right now. You might not see a MCU 8 years from now.
Oh, we're going to see one. You're just being bitter because you didn't like Secret Invasion. That's what this is.
No, about. I like Secret Invasion. I liked it. I like the whole thing. I like the whole scroll thing. I'm a fan. But the fact of the matter is, the numbers went down. And that's the truth. The numbers went down on just about everything.
Yeah, but I mean, we're right now in a dip in comics. I mean, we're in a dip in stuff. I think people are just freaking done with everything. I mean,
well, that's why I'm saying I don't think it's going to be here 8 years from now.
I think the UFC is going to be here. You're just wrong. You're just bitter.
I think they're going to reboot it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they shot themselves after the what was it, Endgame? I think they shot themselves really badly in the foot. I think because you have like a time gap, but then you have like a Spider-Man movie that like wasn't affected. Like it made no sense. Right?
How wasn't it affected? No. I like Spider-Man.
No. I thought there was a problem where we're like
a lot of people didn't like Doctor Strange. I like Doctor Strange. Multi-minus.
You asked about how the Spider-Man movie wasn't affected. Like there was like no time skip in the Spider-Man movie. It was like the time skip of like the 5 years between Infinity Gauntlet and Endgame really messed up a lot of shit in the MCU.
They talked about it throughout the movie.
Yeah, well, it really wasn't believable because I didn't. I mean, you and I both know, like, you can't have Peter in high school still, like, as like a 23-year-old, like.
But he was gone. He was blipped away.
No. In the third one?
Yeah, he was blipped. He was one of the ones that vanished. So when he came back, he was still young.
Yeah, but like all of his classmates are like still.
Not all of them. Not all of them. It showed like in that news broadcast. It showed the guy was old and the girl was young. His best friend and his girlfriend were blipped away too. I don't know. Anyway,
not the point. Not the point. We got off on a tangent, but I think they're the smartest companies in the world. I really do. I think that they've had.
I think they're hurting the LCSs, and because they're hurting the LCSs so bad, that they're hurting.
I think that they've changed their focus and they're chasing the billions, not the millions.
Yeah, they don't care about the comics. I mean,
because it's an IP farm.
That's why I'm saying their comics are lowered, and this is the time for the indies to step up.
I mean, look, you know what it is? I also think the problem with indies and why comic shops are having problems, it's just my thought, is that it's really hard if you can only print 200 copies of your book to have a good price.
Oh yeah, no, I agree.
I mean, and so this is the problem, right? So if you want me to sell your book for $10, I have to get your book for $5, right? Or even less, because eBay takes 13%, Whatnot takes a fee, credit card processing in a comic shop takes 3%. Or it takes up space in a comic shop, that's worth money, right? We all agree on that. I mean, that's not that controversial.
So
right?
This is the reason I say that at least 5 creators should get together. And one of the things that they should do is divide the year up and say, this month we get one title, we distribute that one title to the masses as much as possible. And everybody tries to push that one title. So they're printing this one title for a few thousand instead of these 100 or 200. I don't know what other indie creators print theirs at, but some indie creators are like, oh, I sold out. Well, how many did you print? 300? Well, that's not much. I mean, that's not a big deal to say that you sold out 300 comics. I mean, me personally, I'm trying to print in the thousands to keep my costs low, so I can sell them to the LCSs at a cheap rate so they can make a profit at it. But this is what I'm saying. It's hard to do as an individual. Why do you want to make it that much harder? Form a group that's going to go.
Because the issue becomes is that how many people, so if, let's say you, me, Chris Brown, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you, me, Chris Brown, Lori, John Westhoff. I don't think those people are gonna mind me dropping their name.
Great people.
Yeah, I don't think in this example they mind. So I think it'd be very hard for me to sit out a month if I know I could produce 4 books a year. And I think this is where it gets tricky, is that I don't have a problem.
That's okay. Here's the thing. It's not for everybody. If you can't, do this, then I understand. This you need to find people of like mind. Here's the one thing a friend of mine told me. Not everybody's going to match your speed. Not everybody's going to go to every LCS in the Metroplex and try to sell it. Not everybody's going to go online and do their own video and push it. Not everybody is going to match your speed. What you need to do, what I want to do, is find other people that are my speed, because I want them to be able to be as passionate as I am, because I'm going to push their book as much as I'm going to go to every store that I go to and sell their book, because I want them to do the same. If let's say Creator B, if Creator B is doing 10 books a year, then they don't need this support system.
but they might.
Well,
I mean,
then it's their choice to slow down. But here's the thing. Let's say Tom wants something like this. Tom Hutchinson's a great guy, right? Does tons of comics. An entity of his own. Let's say he can't sell to the DFW Metroplex like I do. Let's say he wants to be part of whatever group I'm in. Then there's got to be certain guidelines. But, I mean, I can understand. Tom is huge. Why would he want to be part of an indie creatorship that's building up?
no, it's tricky because I think this also goes back to the whole thing with Frankie's is that you also have to be affordable for a comic shop. I mean,
well, that's why I'm saying you get about 5 people. You get one comic title every few months, and you have that title that's getting printed as much as you can sell in all these markets. And then the greatest thing about that is after you sell that first one, you can go back around to all the same people who bought it and say, hey, here's what we're coming out with next month. Here's what we're going to come out with the month after that.
See, I have a very different. Oh man, this is controversial because I disagree. I think what you need to do is you need to have 2 or 3 titles every single month.
I agree, but that's hard for indies.
I don't know if it's hard though. In which that I think what you have to do is you have to get it on pre-order, and you have to get commitments, and you have to build out the network of pre-selling it. And you have to go to comic shops and you have to use their money to get your print order. And this is crazy, right? Using OPM.
How many people are going to pre-order that comic? And how many markets are you going to get it in?
Oh, you got to hustle like shit, bro. I mean,
I'll hustle. I'm in about 30 stores. How many independents do you think are in 30 stores?
That's a good question. I don't know.
It's probably a handful. It's probably about 10, maybe 20.
And understanding that I love pre-sales, right? I love pre-sales because
who doesn't? Because you know what you're selling.
What?
Who doesn't? It's because you know what you're selling.
Exactly. I mean, I love it.
But that's not a luxury that indie comic creators have.
I think you know what it is, but also regular comics doesn't have that luxury either. In previews, they don't have that luxury. I mean, comics in general doesn't have that luxury. So it's not an indie problem. When I order 90 days in advance, I'll order Batman 51. I know Batman, but that's it.
If you're saying that they can't do it, mainstream can't do it, then why talk about it?
Mainstream does it all the time.
Who?
Mainstream does it all the time. That's the business model of main like group or the shoot. I can't
How many people do it? That number is probably less than a handful.
What in the main aspect of comics?
The pre-order?
It's called previews. Like, really? Are we really having this discussion where I order my comics 60 to 90 days in advance? You didn't know that?
I know what previews is, but
previews
to get into previews, you have to have a certain number printed before you get into previews.
But no. My point is that it is technically 90 days out. So,
but that's not the way it works. The way it works is I order 4,000, get into previews. Preview says I need 1,000 or 2 because they're going out. The rest you're stuck with.
So no. My point I'm getting at though is that to do a pre-sale is not impossible. What I outlined, it's actually very doable. It's just a matter of how you build it. You have to build the network.
Who's doing it though?
Oh, I mean, it has to be built.
Well, that's the thing. Again, you have to start by getting a network, and if you get 5 creators in 5 different areas. The biggest metroplexes, DFW, Florida, New York, Chicago. And if you get these creators that will go to their...
You guys think it is. I don't think this is that hard. I don't.
Well, then why aren't you doing it? I mean, because I don't see anyone else doing it.
Because I'll tell you exactly why I'm not doing it. In the next 5 years, I'm probably going to do anywhere from 150 to 200,000 in selling comics on eBay at the rate I'm growing. So
Yeah, but
why would I want to leave a lucrative business that works for me, works for what I want to accomplish with 26 to 28% profit margins, pure profit margins, and go do this? I mean, that's a fair statement. I mean, that's an honest statement too. I mean, you cannot fault me in that statement at all.
yeah, but to say that it's easy, nobody's doing it.
Oh, no. I mean, I don't think it's as hard. I just think that somebody who is a network specialist and is a software specialist, I think it's actually essentially somewhat script based, somewhat AI based. And I think if you used AI and you actually scripted it out and that you actually built software, I don't think it's as hard as you think. I'm not saying it's going to be cheap. I don't think
Software to talk
you
to
you
LCSs.
no. You need to build almost a form. You need to build a ordering fulfillment system that deals
For
with this.
LCSs. But then you
And
have to get it into their hands and convince them.
so you have to almost build, in my opinion, the way I would do it is I would build a website, and then you have to. Well, no. You have to though, because
They'll ignore it. This is what I'm telling you. The reason that more creators are not in LCSs is because LCSs don't want to go to your website. They don't want to open your email.
so
They
I'm
want
not
you to
saying.
shake their hand. They want you
I
to.
think so. I was speaking to somebody about this, and we were
Okay.
talking about previews and how with I think it was Kyle Willis, and the fact that you have to. No. I was actually speaking to Peter J. Melanie last night, or not last night, Wednesday, and the biggest problem in comics with previews right now, just collectively, is that you have Lunar Diamond and you got like three others, and it's such a headache because you have a bunch of different areas where you got to order from. So you need to have a simpler order form collectively in comics. And I think that
Have
if
you
you,
ever seen previews?
yeah, I've seen previews.
Okay, this is a catalog
Yeah,
that's
I
about
know what it is.
that thick. That's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is getting noticed. So I go
No.
to the LCS.
The comic book side of actual ordering, it's a pain in the ass for not for the customer, for the shop.
So I go to these LCSs and I ask them, if X, Y, and Z publisher was to get me into previews, would you be able to order some of my books? And they'd be like, yeah, but we usually don't open that book up past page 15. So they don't even see all the other independent books.
Yeah, because usually they order a book when a customer wants something.
So again, it's like the biggest problem is getting noticed.
It's the point is that I guess I take a different thought process on this completely, where my thought process is that I would want to build a website, a program, whatever it is, that has everybody's book, has sample pages in it, and then you could bring a tablet to a comic shop, say, "Hey, here's what we can offer us five creators." And I think you know what is, I think if you sell it the right way, I think if you build it the right way, I think that's how you do it.
I don't think they'll my experience with the comic shops that I went to, they didn't really want to see a laptop. They didn't want to see a computer. They wanted to talk to me. Because I took
I'm
a
not
demo.
don't talk to them either. But I think the way you do this is that I think what you ultimately have to do is you got to talk to them. You got to say, "Hey, here's 6 pages of what to expect." And I think that's just my thoughts on it, because I think you got to try before you buy. I think the best way how to sell anything is giving the experience. I really do.
I don't. I did ash cans. And don't get me wrong, they got me into a few comic shops. But you know what got me into most of them? Good handshake, a hello, a how are you doing?
I maybe I come from a different era where I mean, when I buy a car, I'm going to test drive it.
Well, and it's not me. Because me personally, I'd rather look at something that's a video online. But you're dealing with the comic shop owners, and most of them don't want that disconnect.
See, I actually think that's somewhat ignorant. Then I really do.
Hey, whenever you're dealing with a comic shop owner, you're dealing with them on their turf. It's their
I
store.
understand, but so if I'm to sell somebody's book, right, in my eBay store, I read the book. I
And
have
they do after they get to know me. Usually I leave a book in their shop and I come back and get it a few hours later.
honestly, I'm probably if I ever own a comic shop, I want to know what your product is. I want to know who you are. Secondly,
But
because
they want that connection. I'm telling you, they don't want that. I'm going to look at an email kind of thing. They don't look at it. So one of the things I did before I went to comic shops, like physically went, one of the first things I did was I got a list of comic shops all over Texas, all over like 3 different states. I called them, sent them all emails. You know how many comics I sold that way? Zero. I sent them an email with PDFs, with the comic book, with price guides, everything. Nice stuff. It didn't work. Zero. I called at least 150 stores, but it didn't work.
fair
What
enough.
got me into the 35 stores that I got into, like I said, it's a handshake, a hello. This is what I do.
I guess I have different experiences in sales, where a lot of what I've dealt with is that somebody just wants to know the product, and that's just how I've had my experiences. I'm not going to discount your experience, but that's just what I think, and I get it. I'm not going to not go like, here's my book, and if I buy a book, but my experience, and even in my store, I want to know what's in your book first.
Well, yeah, they're going to want to read the book.
Reason why, and this is just my thought process, is that I know there's certain books I'm just not going to carry, and I just don't want to waste your time, and I don't want you to waste mine. If I know your book is pornography, and I'm a children's kid bookstore, I don't want to have a 20-minute conversation and read your book, be like, oh man, now I feel really shitty because I have to say no. Yeah, I would rather be like, so you see my point, but I digress on that. But I get the argument, and I understand it. I'm not saying I'm going to go into somebody's shop and be disrespectful. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I want to know the product first and foremost, because that's the key for me. At least that's how I do business.
Right.
And it served me well so far. And so that's kind of where I'm at. It doesn't serve me well as an interview because I want to know you when I'm an interviewer. So maybe I should treat, if I ever sell books and sell my comic into shops, like an interview. But I digress. But obviously we covered a lot of shit.
Yeah.
So you want to buy Frankie's with me?
Yeah, man. I would love to run a comic shop. I'm ready.
Oh, I don't want to run a comic shop. It seems like so much work. It really does.
I would love to run a comic shop.
It seems like there's certain things I can't say publicly, but I know somebody, and all he does is he whines and he bitches every day about his comic shop, and I'm like, dude, like you've convinced me not to buy one at all. Like he has single-handedly convinced me to stay on eBay every day. Where I'm like, bro, you run a comic shop, you seem to have a decent business. Like, why are you complaining that like you can't spend time with your kid? Dude, I go to work. I have a 9-to-5 job. I can't spend time when I have a kid either. Like, deal with it. Like, but I digress.
I would love to run a comic shop. I when I went around to the comic shops, I asked a lot of them, "Hey, can I work here?" It's fun just hanging out at the comic shops, let alone working at one. I don't know. Maybe this is just me.
Yeah, I don't know. But we covered a lot. We had a good discussion. Obviously, we have differences of opinions, but we agree on certain things.
Yeah.
But that's that. And I don't know. I'm gonna let you promote yourself before we get out of here. We've been speaking for a while, but where can people find you again? Where can people bother you? Where can people check out what you're doing next and all that fun stuff?
Well, I am Paul Gomez 790. That's going to be on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I am hosting my own show on YouTube. Again, Paul Gomez 790. If you want to check that out. One of the biggest things that's coming up is Inktober. You know, I'm good. I just started drawing a couple months ago, and I'm trying to expand that. I'm gonna try to do a character every month and send them out to customers or fans or this or that, and that's gonna be interesting. You know, one character per day. Other than that, I'm going to Arlington Comic Fest here in Texas. It's going to be in the DFW area. It's going to be the first weekend of October. And that's all I got.
And then I am Andrew Davis, also Andrew the Investor. You can go find me on Pop Anime Comics on YouTube. Also under Conversations in Pop Culture. Facebook is Pop Anime Comics. Instagram is Pop Anime Comics. TikTok is Pop Anime Comics. And I enjoy when people want to interact with me, people want to have a conversation with me, people want to hang out with me. Also, you can check me out on eBay at Pop Anime Comics Collectibles. I have some really, really cool books up right now on my store. A lot of Mount Olympus, some Resident Evil stuff, a lot of cool hollow foils that are ultra rare, 25 or less. I do have probably tomorrow I'm going to be listing a 15 or less book up there. And so I got a lot of cool stuff, got a lot of baseball cards that you're going to want. And you never know what's going to come into my store. And so that's something to keep in mind. And if you're looking for something, I know a lot of friends and I could track down books for you. And I'm more than happy if anybody's looking for that type of stuff for me to track down books. So that's everything with me. And I appreciate everybody checking us out and having a conversation. And I think next Wednesday, we're going to be talking about fables in public domain with a few people. So that's going to be interesting. My understanding of it, and I'll just say this, is that Fables is not really in public domain, but it's going to be a very interesting conversation about public domain characters, what this means, what that looks like, and it's going to be a fun adult conversation. But the interview before that, I got to tell everybody, it's Shauna Reed, some OVW guys, some OVW, and OVW is relevant right now because OVW's documentary released on Netflix today, and so I am super, super excited to have Shauna Reed up there. And she's going to be fantastic, and we're going to have a really, really good time, and I'm really, really excited for that interview. It's been about 3 months that I really got back into OVW, and I'm just stoked. I'm just stoked to have her on, and it's going to be fun. And December Lace is coming on as well, and JD Calderon next week. So a lot of fun stuff, It's going to be a very controversial week, to say the least. So that's everything that I got going on, and I will catch everybody pretty much next week. So have a good week, everybody. Enjoy your weekend, and peace.